Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of week 12. In this lesson, we are going to look at HTML entities and symbols. My name is Mildred. In HTML, there are characters that are reserved, which means that they have special meaning in HTML. And when you use these characters on your web page, the browser is going to pass them as HTML code. For instance, we have the open tag. This is a less than sign in mathematics, but indicates the start of a tag in HTML. And for this, we use an entity name called the ampersand LT with a semicolon, save, and then we have the open tag on the page. If we want to have things like, let's say 20 km/h, and we want the browser to realize that this is a space, but the 20 and the km/h should not be separated, they should always go together. So truncation of spaces in the browser should not affect these two. We use an entity name called non-breaking space character like this, and then save, refresh. We're going to make sure it remains like this. So if there is a code that truncates white spaces, it remains 20 km/h, knowing that these two must remain together. There are other applications like trying to use a symbol or an entity that we don't have on the keyboard. We want to put something like the registered. We use ampersand, reg, save, refresh, and we have the registered symbol. We want to use the copyright symbol, ampersand copy, and then we have the copied symbol. So your course resource has a reference sheet of all entities and their entity names and entity numbers. If you prefer to use numbers rather than names, you find the reference sheet there. So you don't need to have this in your head. You just need to have a reference sheet for you to refer to when you need to use a particular entity on the web page. In mathematics, for instance, we want the integral sign. We do not have that sign on the keyboard. We're going to write that sign using entity name. When I refresh, I have the integral sign. We want to have something like a fraction, half, on the page. We'll come here and write frag 12 and then save, refresh, and we have the half symbol. So these are the use of entity names or entity numbers. So we can actually use the number instead of the name like this. So to use the number, we put the ampersand sign, we put the hash symbol. I'm going to use the hexadecimal number, so X000BD. Save, refresh, and I have the same sign on the page because I replaced the entity name with the entity number. When you have text that is not in English language, for instance, let's say I want to write my language or the languages I speak. Sometimes we write the names of this language in English, which is not correct. We want to write the name of the language like it is pronounced with a dialect, and some of them have their critical marks. If I write my language like this, Igala, save and refresh my page, I have the name of the language here. But this does not reflect the pronunciation or the correct tribal spelling of this. And this is where we use HTML entities also to use their critical marks based on the tone or the pronunciation of the name. And for the pronunciation of this particular language, we want to use a mark going upward, saying that this I has a high tone. I'll use the entity number 769 before the G. The G is normal, flat. A has a high tone also, 769. L is normal. The next A has a high tone. And the last A has a low tone. So this is the ampersand sign. This is the ampersand sign. So don't confuse ampersand and dollar sign. Save this. When I refresh my page, I have the language spelled properly in the dialect or in the correct pronunciation. So when you have a name of a person that is not an English name and it is spelled in the language, you want to make use of HTML entities to be able to put the mark to indicate the tone or to indicate if it's a vowel or whatever it is that differentiates or that makes this word pronounced in the way that it is supposed to be pronounced. We have other application of symbols, like we want to have emojis on the page. So let's say I want to have a smiling emoji, for instance. I will say I want to put, let's say, smile. I'll put the non-breaking space character, and then I'll put the entity number for a smiling emoji, which is 128512. Always end your entity name or number with a semicolon. Save, refresh, and I have a smiling emoji on the page. I want to have let's say I want to have a laugh emoji on the page. I can also do here and put laugh hash 128514. Save, refresh. So now this did not apply because I would have put it without the ampersand sign, like this. Refresh, and then we have it here. So these are the applications of entities and symbols on the page. So if you have a symbol, mathematical symbol, that you want to insert on the page that is not present on your keyboard, you want the euro sign, for instance, you want to write your value of a currency in euros that is not on the keyboard, you can use ampersand euro to indicate the euro sign. So these are the kind of things that you use the entity names or the entity numbers to do, and you can create symbols that do not exist on the keyboard, mathematical symbols and the likes. So refer to the reference sheet to try out the different symbols, and always remember that you don't need to have this in your head. You just need to have a reference sheet where you go to when you need a particular entity or a particular symbol on your page, and you use them as appropriate. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.